There is a single office building in London that right now literally holds more power over global oil flows than most of the world's navies combined. Pretty wild, right? Welcome to This Explainer, where we're taking a really fascinating look into source materials that detail exactly how the insurance market, specifically Lloyd's of London, has functionally become a weapon of modern warfare. We usually think of global conflict in terms of warships and blockades, but the reality of modern geopolitics, it's actually hidden inside spreadsheets, actuarial tables, and multi-million-dollar premium hikes. So here's our roadmap for today. 1. The weaponized insurance market. 2. Mechanics of war risk surcharges. 3. The March 5th invisible blockade. 4. Premium jumps in oil allocation. 5. China's shadow fleet loophole. And finally, 6. Private hands global power. All right, let's jump straight into part 1, the weaponized insurance market. Think about a traditional naval blockade. You're talking about billions of dollars in military hardware, massive logistical nightmares, and obviously an enormous risk of actual kinetic conflict. But on the flip side, you have the Lloyd's Joint War Committee. This is just a group of unelected insurance professionals sitting in a room over in London. They aren't deploying destroyers, they're deploying actuarial risk assessments. And yet, as our sources highlight, their decisions can halt global shipping tracks way faster than a fleet of warships ever could. And the sheer scale of this power, it's just staggering. When this one single committee makes a call on maritime risk, they are directly affecting 20% of the entire global oil supply. Think about that. 1/5 of the energy powering the planet's economies is entirely at the mercy of their risk assessments. Moving on to part 2, mechanics of war risk surcharges. So the Joint War Committee keeps a specific roster of what they call listed areas around the globe. When a body of water gets this designation, insurers do one of two things. They either slap on massive war risk surcharges, or they completely withdraw what's called P&I, protection and indemnity coverage entirely. P&I is absolutely crucial. It's the liability insurance covering environmental damage, collisions, and loss of life. A modern supertanker carries hundreds of millions of dollars in liability risk, meaning if you try to operate without P&I, it's a literal financial impossibility for Western corporations. And this creates a totally unstoppable domino effect. First, the area gets designated. Second, coverage is either pulled or just priced completely out of existence. Step 3 is where those specific financial mechanics really bite hard. You see, without valid P&I insurance, port authorities won't let a ship dock. Why? Because they are not going to accept the massive liability of a potential oil spill. Cargo owners won't load their oil, and financiers, they instantly pull their backing. Which brings us to step 4. Without a single shot being fired, the ship simply cannot legally or practically sail. The financial infrastructure completely dictates the physical infrastructure. Let's look at part 3, the March 5 invisible blockade. To put this into perspective, on March 5, 2026, P&I war risk coverage was abruptly withdrawn for the Persian Gulf. Instantly, that domino effect we just talked about, it was triggered. Then, following the Sanmar Herald incident on April 19th, the market tightened even more. It got to the point where Lloyd's was considering extending those listed areas all the way out to cover the full Gulf of Oman approach. Financial markets react in hours, right? Military blockades take weeks to mobilize. This timeline shows a super rapid reactive escalation driven entirely by private financial markets. So, from March 5th onward, the Strait of Hormuz was functionally closed. But it wasn't closed by naval mines or government military orders. It was commercially closed by insurance underwriters in London. They ran the numbers, assessed the risk was too high, pulled the coverage, and effectively blocked shipping far better than any state-sponsored military blockade could have pulled off in that time frame. All right, part 4, premium jumps and oil allocation. Right after that Sanmar Herald incident, war risk premiums spiked by 40 to 60%. Let's really break down the specific financial mechanics of what that actually means on the ground. Say a company is shipping $50 million worth of crude. If the insurance premium suddenly jumps from a tiny fraction of a percent to a massive flat rate per voyage, we're talking sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single day, it entirely wipes out the profit margin for the cargo owner. The physical commodity is just instantly priced out of the market. The oil freezes in place, not because the ship is physically stuck, but simply because the math no longer works. But here's the kicker. This financial blockade does not affect everyone equally. While general vessels saw across-the-board hikes, Indian-flagged vessels were hit with very targeted, country-specific surcharges. This happens because actuaries literally sit down and calculate specific destination and geopolitical risks tied to certain flags. Because of that granular, hyper-specific calculation, the insurance market gets to pick and choose the financial viability of different nations' shipping fleets, based solely on the flag flying on the back of the boat. Which leads us to a really profound realization from the source analysis. To quote directly, insurance markets are doing the sorting that naval blockades used to do. Because of these exact financial mechanics, war risk premiums are now the de facto tool for allocating which countries actually get energy. If your nation's flagged vessels are slapped with higher premiums, your country effectively pays significantly more per barrel of oil, or you just get completely priced out of shipping altogether. Which brings us to Part 5, China's shadow fleet loophole. Okay, so Western insured vessels are highly regulated, and they have guaranteed insured recovery if disaster strikes. But because of the Joint War Committee, they are currently blocked from these key waterways. On the flip side, you have China's shadow fleet. These ships operate almost entirely with non-Western insurance, or honestly, sometimes no insurance at all. And because these Chinese-flagged and shadow tankers operate completely outside the Western financial infrastructure, they can technically just keep transiting these restricted areas to keep the oil flowing to China. But this bypass creates a terrifying global trade-off. Sure, the oil keeps flowing, but if one of these shadow fleet tankers has an oil spill, there's zero insured recovery. If there's a collision, absolutely no coverage. If the vessel is a total loss, it's completely uninsured. It means a massive environmental and financial risk is being actively introduced into these transit zones, and the liability is being borne by exactly no one. Finally, Part 6, Private Hands, Global Power. Just take a second to consider the immense scale of this entire system. 20% of the global oil supply is directly subject to the decisions of the Joint War Committee. One private committee in London is dictating the flow of a fifth of the world's energy supply purely through their actuarial assessments. The physical infrastructure of trade, we're talking the massive steel ships, the sprawling ports, the global naval presence, it all depends entirely on an invisible financial infrastructure. When Lloyd's withdraws coverage, nobody needs to coordinate a military strike. Every single actor in the supply chain, the port authorities, the cargo owners, the global banks, they all just respond automatically to that financial signal. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought presented by the analysis. Should this immense geopolitical power exist in private hands? Has the insurance market quietly become a weapon of war that desperately needs international regulation? Or is this just the unavoidable reality of a globally financed world? It's a complex question, but the answer dictates the future of global energy. Take a moment to really think about that. And as always, keep exploring the hidden structures that shape our world.